Hello friends. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now tell me one thing. Have you ever made a decision so wrong that even today, a part of you wishes you could go back and stop yourself? Maybe you trusted someone you shouldn't have. Maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken. Or maybe you walked into something that changed your life forever. Watch this story till the end, because the answer to why we make bad decisions, even when we know they'll destroy us, lies hidden inside. February always felt like a second chance to me, a quiet pause between winter's bitterness and spring's slow promise. But that was also when my life began to come apart, thread by thread, without me realizing it. I had just turned 32, living in a small one-bedroom apartment on the north side of Portland. I worked nights at a medical claims office, the kind of job that dulls your mind until you start narrating your own life in invoices and copay codes. Most nights, I'd get home around midnight, heat up leftover Thai food, scroll through Netflix until sleep finally won. My last relationship had ended nearly a year earlier. Ethan, my ex, decided he needed to find clarity and move to Arizona with a woman he met in a meditation group. I told everyone I was fine. I even believed it for a while. I had my wine Fridays with coworkers, my weekend jogs, my small routines that made me feel normal. But one Thursday night, after my cousin's engagement dinner, sitting in a dim little bar surrounded by couples laughing over cocktails, that loneliness crept back in. That's when I met Dylan. He walked up to my table with 2 beers and said, "Looks like we're the only 2 people here not making wedding plans." I laughed, maybe a little too eagerly, and told him to sit. He had this calm energy, the kind that made you feel like he saw right through the noise of everyone else. Not charming in a movie star way, but attentive, real. He asked questions that actually meant something. What I did when I couldn't sleep, what my favorite sound was, why I always ordered whiskey instead of wine. He remembered everything I told him, even the tiny details, like how I collected vintage anatomy prints, or that I couldn't eat shrimp, but sometimes did anyway, just to prove to myself I still could. We texted constantly after that night. Little things, good morning messages, songs he thought I'd like, photos of his dog, Bo. He said he worked remotely in IT for a startup in Seattle, but was looking for a new place closer to Portland. By the 3rd week, he joked that he might as well move into my spare room since I was always feeding him anyway. When he showed me his pay stubs and offered to split rent, it seemed harmless. The extra $900 a month would help me finally pay off my car loan. So, when he moved in that April Saturday, with only 2 suitcases, a laptop, and a small desktop tower, I told myself I was being practical. That first night, he cooked dinner. Homemade pasta, fresh herbs, wine that actually matched the meal. We stayed up till 3 a.m. talking about childhood fears. Mine was dying alone and unnoticed. His was being seen as a fraud, someone pretending to be smarter than he was. We laughed, said we were both darkly self-aware. It all felt easy. Normal. Until it wasn't. The changes started small. He suggested linking our grocery lists on one shared app, then asked for my Wi-Fi password, then my Netflix. Then, "Hey, why don't we use your Amazon Prime instead of paying for 2? It was always logical, always said with that careful tone that made refusal sound ridiculous. When my friend Lena called him a little too intense, he smirked and said she was projecting her own relationship insecurities. He had an explanation for everything, every uneasy thought that flickered in my head. When my co-worker Marcus texted me about a project, Dylan leaned over my shoulder, smiling softly as he read the screen. Marcus seems persistent, doesn't he? He never said, "Don't talk to him." He didn't have to. He was always close, always there when I cooked, when I showered, when I sat at my desk working. His presence filled the space, quietly shaping my decisions. The first real warning came one night when he borrowed my laptop to order takeout, because his was updating. Later, I found my photo folders rearranged, years-old pictures opened recently. When I asked about it, he laughed and said he was just organizing them for me. I brushed it off. I'd started doubting myself by then anyway. Money came next. One night, when I struggled to transfer him $42 for groceries, he teased me about forgetting my passwords. "You always mix up your PINs," he laughed. "Want me to just handle the shared bills for you? I'll send you the breakdown every month." It made sense. He was good with numbers. He set up autopay for utilities through my account, for convenience. Soon, he was telling me when to skip buying new clothes, when to save for emergencies. He'd check my balance, just to help. It was subtle, so slow that I didn't notice how much I'd stopped making decisions on my own. By June, my bank app would log me out randomly. Dylan said he was tightening security. When I asked for the new password, he smiled. "Don't worry," I wrote it down somewhere safe. I never saw that paper. July came with heat and migraines. One day I left work early, desperate to lie down, and found Dylan in my room, not his, at my desk, transferring files to his hard drive. He didn't even look startled. "Your laptop's been slowing down," he said. "I'm backing up your stuff before it crashes." He smiled the same way he always did. But his eyes, they didn't match the smile anymore. I remember thinking it was like watching a mask settle back into place. That night, he cooked my favorite, creamy mushroom risotto, and we watched a movie like nothing had happened. But I noticed my email logins didn't work the next morning. He claimed it was a temporary glitch. I should have run then. But I didn't. By August, the isolation was complete. When I tried telling Lena something felt wrong, she accused me of ghosting her after a string of nasty messages sent from my number. Messages I hadn't written. Dylan said, maybe I'd had one too many glasses of wine, or maybe I was overworking. He reminded me I'd mentioned stress-related memory gaps once. His voice was calm, logical, warm, and I started to believe him. He began staying up later. Working. When I woke at night, I'd sometimes hear faint clicking from the living room, the soft hum of his computer fans, the glow of his monitor in the dark. I'd ask what he was doing, and he'd just say, backing up things. For both of us. The next wave hit in September. Credit card companies called about strange purchases, expensive electronics, cameras, drones, all shipped to random addresses. I panicked. He was calm. He even sat next to me, holding my hand while I called the banks. "It's probably identity theft," he said. "You process sensitive data at work. It happens." He promised to help me fix it. He even loaned me money until it got sorted out. I didn't realize that debt was another leash. Within 3 weeks, my credit score dropped 300 points. My savings were gone. He had my pay stubs, my logins, my bank credentials, everything. But I still didn't know for sure, not until October. The photos started showing up at my job. Anonymous emails sent to my supervisor. Pictures of me in my apartment, sleeping, changing, eating breakfast. Nothing explicit, but invasive. Violated. The captions were taunting. "You never really know who's watching. She hides so much." I quit that week. My supervisor said she was concerned for my well-being. Dylan drove me home that day. He held me while I cried, telling me how awful people could be. Then he suggested installing security cameras in our apartment to catch whoever's doing this. That suggestion nearly broke me, because I realized, for the first time, what I'd been refusing to see. I waited for a moment when he'd be gone long enough. That came on a Monday morning when he said he had a job interview 2 hours away. He left in his usual calm rush, coffee thermos, laptop bag, quick kiss on the forehead. The second he turned the corner, I grabbed a hammer from under the sink and went straight to his room. I destroyed his computer, smashed the screen until the hard drive popped loose. It was shaking in my hands like a live thing when I drove to my cousin Amanda's house. She was a paralegal. She'd helped people in bad relationships before, but never like this. We connected the drive to her computer, and there it was. My life in folders, labeled, indexed, a digital museum of everything private. My photos, emails, passwords, recordings, actual recordings of my phone calls, video clips from inside my bedroom, from angles that made my stomach drop. He'd wired tiny cameras into the vents, under the shelves, even behind the mirror. Every moment I thought was mine had been his to watch. Amanda called the police while I sat on the bathroom floor trying not to vomit. They confiscated the drive. The detective who took our statement said it was one of the most sophisticated domestic surveillance cases she'd seen. Dylan was arrested 3 days later at a motel outside Eugene, Oregon. Still using my credit card, still logged into my email, still sending messages to my old coworkers pretending to be me. The restraining order came fast. The relief came slower. It took months to close the fraudulent accounts, to fix the damage to my credit. Longer to rebuild trust with people who thought I'd lashed out at them. Some of them still don't talk to me. I moved to a new apartment across the river, smaller, safer, with blackout curtains and no shared passwords. I still check the corners sometimes, still unplug devices before bed, still wake up at 3 a.m. to make sure my phone is really off. But that Monday morning, when I chose to stop doubting myself, was when I started taking my life back. Some people think monsters hide under beds or in the woods. Mine hid behind a smile and a shared Wi-Fi network. And sometimes, when I'm walking home and catch my reflection in a dark window, I whisper to myself, "You survived. You see the world clearly now." I'd been single for about 7 months when my coworker, Jason, started pushing me to try dating apps again. He'd go on and on about how it's not weird anymore, man. Everyone's on there, while showing me profiles of women who apparently lived less than 2 miles away. At 31, after ending a 6-year relationship with Emily, I wasn't exactly excited about getting back into dating. The thought of small talk, awkward first meetings, pretending to care about shared interests, it just felt exhausting. But Jason wouldn't stop. That Thursday night, he even stood in my kitchen, scrolling through his own matches, bragging about how he'd been on 3 dates that week. I just rolled my eyes, reheating leftover pizza while he practically dictated how to build a good profile. So I gave in. I downloaded HeartSync, one of those safe and verified dating apps, and made a quick profile. A few pictures from a summer barbecue, one of me hiking, and a short bio about liking craft beer and road trips. Nothing special. Within an hour, I had a match. Her name was Lena. Her profile said she worked at a physical therapy clinic in Chicago's North Side, originally from Minnesota, and loved coffee shops, thunderstorms, and true crime podcasts. She looked genuinely normal. We started chatting, and unlike most of my matches, she actually wrote full sentences. No random emojis or half-hearted, "Hey." She was funny too, sarcastic in the same way I was. By midnight, we'd exchanged over 100 messages. She told me about how she'd recently moved for work, was still figuring out the city, and hated how expensive rent was in Uptown. I told her about my job doing IT support for a shipping company, about how boring it was, and how I'd just moved in with my new roommate Ethan after 2 others had left to live with their girlfriends. By Friday evening, we'd been talking for 2 straight days. It felt natural, easy, like I'd known her longer than 48 hours. When I suggested grabbing a drink that weekend, she hesitated. Said she had work on Saturday and planned Sunday, but maybe we could do something chill at my place after her shift. I joked, skipping the awkward first date coffee? Bold move. She replied with 3 laughing emojis and said, I like bold. That Saturday, around 7:30 p.m., she texted that she was dead tired, but still down to hang out. Ethan was gone for the weekend visiting his family in Wisconsin, so I figured why not? I cleaned the apartment like my mom was coming over, wiped the counters, hid the laundry, even lit one of those candles Emily had left behind. By 8:40, she messaged that her Uber was outside. I checked the peephole, heart pounding, and opened the door. Lena looked just like her pictures. Actually, better. Wavy brown hair, hazel eyes, casual jeans, and a gray sweater that somehow looked effortlessly perfect. She carried a bottle of red wine and smiled like she was nervous, but trying not to show it. I offered her a drink and we sat in the living room. The first 15 minutes went fine. Small talk about the city, mutual complaints about parking, random stories from work. She noticed the books on my shelf, laughed about how I had 3 copies of the same Stephen King novel because friends kept gifting them to me. Everything felt normal until someone knocked on my door. A slow, testing knock, 3 taps. We both froze. It wasn't loud, just deliberate. I remember saying something like, probably a neighbor, before another knock came, harder this time. Then the doorknob turned. I knew I'd locked it. I always lock it. But the knob twisted again, more forcefully. Then the door burst open like it had been kicked. 2 men stormed in wearing black ski masks, one tall and muscular, the other smaller, jittery like he was high on something. The big one grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the wall so hard the picture frame above my TV shattered. I couldn't breathe. His hand felt like steel on my neck. The smaller guy waved a knife, yelling for me to stay still. But Lena didn't move. She just sat there, hands clasped around her glass of wine, her face blank. Not scared, not shocked, just watching. I tried to yell her name, but all that came out was a strangled noise. Then she calmly reached into her purse. For a second, I thought she was calling 911, but no. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, notes, written in neat handwriting, and started reading from it. Bedroom on the left belongs to him. Laptop in the closet. Black backpack. Check the kitchen. There's a coffee tin above the fridge with cash inside. I froze. How could she know that? That cash was for emergencies. I'd never mentioned it. Not to her, not to anyone except Ethan. The big guy loosened his grip just enough for me to gasp, trying to process what was happening. Lena kept reading calmly, like she was listing groceries. He's got a MacBook, a PS5, and some camera gear under the bed. The smaller guy darted around the apartment, grabbing everything she mentioned. That's when I realized she wasn't a victim. She was with them. The realization hit me harder than the punch that came next. The tall man shoved me to the floor, his boot pressing into my chest, while Lena walked closer. She looked down at me with this detached curiosity, the warmth completely gone from her eyes. You shouldn't keep things in such obvious places, she said softly. Makes it too easy. They forced me to unlock my phone and banking apps. She watched me enter my passcodes, standing so close I could smell her perfume, vanilla and something floral. The same scent I'd thought was comforting when she walked in. After about 20 minutes, they'd stripped the place bare. Laptops, wallet, watch, even Ethan's game console. Before leaving, Lena crouched next to me. She brushed her hand through my hair, almost gently, and whispered, "You're a nice guy, Matt. Sorry it had to be you." Then she smiled faintly. "Oh, and don't bother calling the cops. Lena's not my real name." The smaller guy laughed, this sharp, insane giggle that still echoes in my head sometimes, and they were gone. The door hung crooked on its hinges. I sat there for a full minute, trying to breathe, shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The cops arrived an hour later. A young officer called me "Sir" every 2 seconds, while his partner, a woman maybe in her 40s, looked like she'd seen this 100 times. When I showed them the dating app on my laptop, Lena's profile was already gone. Messages deleted. No trace. The older cop sighed and said, "You're the 5th case like this month. They use stolen photos and fake names. They build trust, then set you up." She gave me a case number, told me not to expect much. Ethan came home Sunday night. He found me sitting on the couch with a baseball bat across my knees, my apartment half empty, and my voice barely working. When I told him everything, he was furious, wanted to blast it online, warn everyone. But I couldn't. How do you tell people you were stupid enough to invite a stranger from an app into your home? We told our friends I'd been mugged in the hallway. Easier that way. We changed the locks, installed a doorbell camera, even got those loud doorstop alarms that scream if anyone forces the door. But none of it made me feel safe. For weeks, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every hallway noise made me jump. I started working from home permanently. Told my boss it was for efficiency. Truth was, I couldn't handle crowds anymore. Every time I caught the faint scent of vanilla perfume, on a stranger, in an elevator, at the grocery store, my heart would pound so hard I'd feel dizzy. Therapy helped a little. My therapist said I had classic PTSD symptoms. Said it wasn't the robbery that did it. It was the betrayal, the false intimacy. But how do you explain that the worst part wasn't the money or the fear? It was that for 3 days, I thought someone actually cared. That every message, every laugh, every little connection I felt was fake. 6 months later, I still haven't dated again. Jason doesn't bring up the apps anymore. Not after I nearly had a panic attack when he suggested trying one with better safety verification. My sister got married last month. I went alone and lied. Told everyone my girlfriend couldn't make it because of work. It's easier to lie than to explain what really happened. Last week, the detective called again. They'd caught someone in Cleveland, part of the same operation. But the woman arrested looked nothing like Lena's photos. She wasn't even the one messaging people, just another layer of the scam. He said I might be asked to testify. But what would I even say? That all I remember are those eyes above the ski masks? After we hung up, I deleted his number and sat in the dark for a long time. The apartment's quiet now. Too quiet. I still keep the baseball bat beside my bed. Still triple-check the locks. And every time my phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number, I feel that same cold knot in my stomach. Because part of me still wonders if Lena, or whatever her real name was, ever thinks about the men she's destroyed. If she ever remembers that stupid joke about thunderstorms and coffee shops, or the guy who thought he was lucky enough to meet her. Nobody really thinks about how terrifying the open road can be until it's just you, the dark, and the sound of your engine dying. It happened on a Sunday night in February, a week after my 31st birthday. I was driving back to Madison after visiting my parents in rural Illinois, trying to beat the freezing rain that had been crawling across the radar all day. My car, a beat-up silver Civic, had been whining every time I hit 60. My brother kept telling me to get it looked at, but I'd just moved into a new apartment, and rent doesn't pay itself. I figured I could squeeze a few more weeks out of it. That was my mistake. About 60 miles from anywhere familiar, on a stretch of Route 19 where the nearest gas station was probably an hour away, the car shuddered once, twice, then coughed itself to death. The check engine light flickered uselessly before the dashboard went black. No engine, no heat. Just silence, and the sound of sleet starting to tap against the windshield. I sat there for a minute, hoping maybe it would miraculously start again. But when I turned the key, I got nothing. Not even a click. My phone showed 1 bar, maybe 2 if I leaned toward the window. I tried calling roadside assistance through my insurance, but the call dropped 3 times in a row before I even reached a human being. I checked the time, 10:43 p.m., and tried searching towing near me. Every place within 50 miles was closed. Their websites all listed business hours that ended at 8 p.m. Then, buried at the bottom of the results, I found one called Rapid Haul Recovery. No logo, no address. Just a plain white page with a phone number, a few lines of text saying, 24-hour emergency towing, no membership required, and a simple form asking for name, number, and location. No reviews, no social media, nothing. It looked shady, sure, but it also looked like my only option. I filled it out quickly, fingers trembling from the cold. I didn't use my real name. I never do on random sites. I just put Melissa and hit submit. A few seconds later, a message popped up. A driver has been dispatched. Estimated arrival, 35 minutes. I barely had time to process it when my phone rang. Blocked number. Hello, a man's voice came through, calm and confident. Hi there, this is Sam from Rapid Haul Recovery. Got your request. You're on Route 19 near mile marker 214. I blinked. Yeah, how'd you know? You dropped a pin. Just confirming. I'll be there in about half an hour. You're in a Civic, right? Silver? Yeah, he paused. Anyone with you tonight? That question made me uncomfortable. My boyfriend's expecting me in Madison. I lied. He chuckled softly. Good. Always smart to tell someone where you are. Keep your doors locked. I'll knock when I get there. When the call ended, I just sat there, listening to the sleet getting heavier. The road was empty, except for the occasional semi-truck rumbling past every 10 minutes. I pulled my coat tighter and checked the website again, just out of curiosity. The contact form was gone. Now it only said, currently unavailable. Please try again tomorrow. Weird, right? How can a 24-hour service be unavailable 30 minutes after I booked? About 40 minutes later, headlights appeared behind me. Relief hit me like a wave, until I realized it wasn't a tow truck. It was a white cargo van, no company name, no flashing lights. The van stopped directly behind my car, blocking me in. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, wearing dark coveralls, and a beanie pulled low over his head. He carried a small flashlight, and what looked like a thin metal tool, a slim Jim. He walked up to my window, shining the light into my face. I cracked it open just an inch. You must be Melissa, he said with a faint smile. My stomach dropped. I'd used that fake name only once, on that website. Yeah, I said. You're from Rapid Haul? That's right. Sam. Sorry about the delay. Weather's making the road slick, I nodded, pretending to relax. Do you have any ID? He reached into his pocket and flashed a laminated card with the Rapid Haul logo and his name. The logo looked pixelated, like it had been printed on a home printer. Tow truck's meeting us up the road, he said. I'll just take a look under your hood, see if we can get you running." Before I could answer, he was already popping my hood. I watched through the windshield as he leaned in, moving things around. The sound wasn't right. Metal on metal, harsh scraping, like he was removing something, not fixing it. I reached for my phone to call 911. No signal. Not even emergency service. Just no service across the top. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Sam came back to my window. "Try the ignition," he said, voice flatter now. I hesitated. "Come on," he said, smiling again. "Let's get you home to your boyfriend." I turned the key. The engine sputtered, then started. Rough, uneven, but running. He slammed the hood closed. "There we go. Follow me to our shop. It's about 15 miles north. Don't worry about your phone. Signal's better once we're moving." My fingers froze on the steering wheel. I hadn't mentioned my phone. He walked back to his van, started it up, and pulled onto the road. Something in me snapped. I threw my car into reverse, spun the wheel, and gunned it in the opposite direction. My tires fishtailed on the icy pavement, but I didn't stop. Not until his headlights disappeared completely. 5 minutes later, my engine started choking again. Whatever he did under the hood, it wasn't a repair. The car died completely near a patch of pine trees. I coasted to the shoulder, grabbed my phone and purse, and started running down the embankment toward what looked like lights in the distance. The air burned my lungs. The snow was deeper than I thought. Then I heard it. An engine behind me. Slow. Steady. The van. I threw myself behind a fallen log as the headlights swept across the road. The van stopped where my car was. Through the branches, I saw Sam step out again. Calm. Unhurried. He circled my car once, then opened the driver's door and leaned inside. When he stood up, he was holding a phone. My phone. Except my phone was in my pocket. He typed something, glanced toward the woods, then dropped it onto the passenger seat and drove off, like he already knew where I'd gone. I stayed there, shaking so hard I could barely breathe, until his taillights vanished completely. Then I ran. The lights I'd seen earlier turned out to be a 24-hour truck stop. I stumbled inside, covered in snow, crying, barely able to speak. The clerk, a woman maybe in her 20s, took one look at me and said, "Honey, are you okay? You need me to call someone?" I nodded, collapsing against the counter. The state troopers arrived about 20 minutes later. I told them everything. The website, the call, the van, the fake ID. One of them, Officer Daniels, radioed dispatch to look up rapid haul recovery. Nothing came up. No license, no registration, no records at all. Then his partner, a quiet older guy, asked for my phone. He tried to open the website again. Dead link. Just an error page. While they were talking, my phone lit up with 15 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The voicemails made my stomach twist. The first few were just silence, then breathing, then Sam's voice. Calm. Even. "You left your headlights on. Your car's still warm. You shouldn't wander in this weather, Melissa." The last one made Officer Daniels take my phone out of my hand. "Your boyfriend's worried," Sam said softly. "He says you never came home." The police checked my car the next morning. Inside, they found another phone, identical to mine. Same purple case, same wallpaper. But it wasn't mine. It had text messages sent to half my contacts. "Don't worry, I'm heading west for a while. Need a break. Starting over. Please don't call." Officer Daniels said it looked like someone was trying to stage a disappearance. And then he told me something that made my skin crawl. This wasn't the first case. There had been 3 other women in the past 2 years, all found through fake roadside assistance ads or websites that vanished after being used once. 2 were found days later, drugged and disoriented, with missing memories. One, named Carla Jennings, was still missing. A week later, the police caught someone at a rest stop near Kansas City. His name wasn't Sam. It was Leon Grady. He'd been approaching a woman whose car had broken down after she clicked a pop-up ad for emergency towing. In his van, they found portable signal jammers, 12 prepaid phones with matching cases, fake towing website templates, and a flash drive full of victims' information scraped from data leaks. He's still in custody awaiting trial. The FBI thinks he worked alone, creating fake roadside companies that only appeared in search results for isolated highways during bad weather. They believe he used the victims' own data, names, numbers, even addresses, to build believable traps. I had to identify him through a one-way mirror. Even behind glass, those eyes, pale gray, unblinking, made my stomach turn. He smiled, slow and deliberate, like he knew me. Now, every time I see a white van in my rearview mirror, my chest tightens. I check my phone twice before trusting any service number online. And I still keep a printed roadside assistance card in my glove compartment. Because out there, on those empty highways, you never really know who's coming to help you. Or who's coming because you asked for it. So, did you find the answer? We don't make bad decisions because we're weak. We make them because, in that moment, our heart convinces us it's the right thing to do. And by the time the truth hits us, it's already too late. A lonely, snow-covered rural highway at night. An abandoned silver car on the roadside with headlights dimmed. A faint white van silhouette parked behind it under falling sleet, surrounded by dark pine trees and fog. Cinematic lighting, cold blue tones, eerie atmosphere, no humans visible. By Sunday, the inbox was chaos. One guy wanted to pay with crypto. Another offered to trade rent for handyman work. Someone else said they preferred no rules about guests, which sounded like code for nightly chaos. Then came one email that looked normal. Hi, my name's Alex. I'm new to the area. I work remotely in IT and just need a quiet place for a few months while I get settled. I'm tidy, quiet, and can pay the first month and deposit in cash. Attached is a photo of my ID. Thanks for your time. The message was short, professional, no emojis or weird slang. Attached was a Pennsylvania driver's license. Alex Turner, age 41. Daniel skimmed it and said, "This one looks decent." He didn't have any social media that I could find, but the ID looked legit, and he even attached references from 2 landlords. Both phone numbers worked. One woman even answered and said yes, Alex had rented from her for 6 months. No issues. We scheduled to meet him Monday evening at 6 p.m. Sharp, there was a soft knock on our front door. He was exactly like his email. Plain, forgettable. Early 40s maybe. Thinning brown hair. A gray windbreaker zipped to his chin. He smiled just enough to seem polite. "Hi, I'm Alex Turner. Thank you for seeing me." He didn't look dangerous. If anything, he looked like the type of guy who alphabetized his files. His eyes were calm, distant, and strangely unreadable. We walked him through the house. He asked normal questions about the utilities, neighborhood noise, garbage pickup days. He seemed grateful, polite. Then he pulled an envelope from his coat and set it gently on the kitchen counter. "Here's first month and deposit. I can move in Wednesday if that's okay." Inside were 14 crisp $100 bills. Daniel looked at me, and I could see the question in his eyes. Should we trust this? But that envelope looked like oxygen to 2 people who'd been drowning. We said yes. He moved in quietly. 2 small suitcases and a laptop bag. No furniture, no decorations. I told myself he was just minimalist. Lots of traveling professionals were. He worked from his room most of the time, door closed, voice low during Zoom calls. We hardly saw him, except in passing. A polite nod in the hallway, a quiet morning in the kitchen. Daniel even joked, "He's like a ghost roommate, perfect tenant." But the weirdness started small. One Saturday morning, my favorite coffee mug was sitting in a different spot. Not a big deal. Maybe I'd forgotten I moved it. Then, a few days later, my makeup bag was missing from the bathroom shelf. Daniel thought I misplaced it. I found it 2 days later, zipped and neatly placed inside the linen closet behind folded towels. Another night, Daniel swore his toolbox in the garage looked shifted around. We brushed it off. Little things, coincidences, until they weren't. A week later, my grandmother's silver necklace vanished from the jewelry dish beside our bed. It had been there that morning. I was sure of it. I tore the bedroom apart, crying, checking under the dresser, the nightstand, everywhere. Daniel tried to calm me down, but that night, he noticed his external hard drive, the one with all his project files, was missing from his desk. 2 valuable things in 2 days. That's when the denial started to crack. Daniel wanted to confront Alex immediately, but I hesitated. What if we were wrong? What if we misplaced things and accused someone innocent? We decided to set up an old phone camera on a bookshelf in the living room, facing the hallway, just to be sure. That night, I barely slept. Wednesday afternoon, I got home from the clinic before sunset. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Not normal quiet, a strange, heavy emptiness. Alex's door was half open. I called his name. No answer. Inside, nothing. Completely empty. No suitcases. No laptop. The drawers were open and clean, like he'd never been there. Then I saw the safe. Our small fireproof box, the one we kept in the closet with passports, birth certificates, and emergency cash, was on the floor. The door bent open like a tin can. Everything gone. I screamed for Daniel, even though he wasn't home. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone while dialing 911. The back door stood wide open, letting in the cold evening air. It hit me. He was gone. 2 officers came within 30 minutes. One younger, one older. They looked tired, like they'd seen this exact situation too many times. They asked for his ID photo. Daniel pulled it up on his phone. The Pennsylvania license. The older officer, Sergeant Lewis, frowned almost immediately. "This format's wrong. Pennsylvania doesn't use that hologram anymore." He tapped a few keys on his tablet, then shook his head. "This license doesn't exist. The number doesn't match any record. The name Alex Turner wasn't real. The address listed on the ID, a vacant parking lot in Philadelphia. Everything about him, the ID, the references, the job, was fabricated. Even the woman who answered his reference call was likely part of it. They told us we'd been hit by a temporary tenant scam. It had been spreading through Oregon, con artists posing as short-term renters, using fake IDs and paying in cash to gain trust. They'd move in, stay quiet, gather information, steal small things first, then the big ones, then vanish. Lewis said we'd probably never see the stolen items again. When he left, he handed us a case number. I could tell by his tone it meant nothing. The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of damage control. We had to call banks, cancel credit cards, change every password, file for new passports and birth certificates. Daniel spent hours on the phone with his clients because some of his work files were on that stolen drive. We installed cameras, new locks, even motion sensors. But the house never felt safe again. The air always felt heavier, like Alex had left something behind that we couldn't clean out. One night, while checking the new security footage, I noticed something that froze me. The timestamp showed 2 days before he disappeared. 2:14 a.m. The camera in the living room caught Alex stepping quietly into the hallway. He wasn't in his work clothes this time. He was barefoot, wearing only a plain t-shirt. He moved slowly, almost tenderly, running his hand along the wall like he was memorizing the texture. Then he stopped right outside our bedroom door and stood there for nearly 5 full minutes, unmoving, just breathing. Then he turned toward the camera, directly at it, and smiled. Not a big smile, just a faint, knowing curl of the lips. Then the screen went black. He'd unplugged it. I deleted the footage the next day, but that image never left me. We sold the house 3 months later. The fear never went away. Every creak made me sit up in bed. Every knock on the door made my heart race. We took a loss on the sale, moved into a small apartment in downtown Salem. Even now, years later, I still check behind doors when I come home. I still can't sleep without locking every window twice. The police never caught him. Sometimes I imagine him. New name, new ID, another envelope of crisp hundreds, walking into some other desperate couple's home. He probably knocks the same soft way, speaks with the same calm voice, smiles that same forgettable smile. And they'll probably let him in, just like we did. The first time I met Mark Benson, it was at the annual Maplewood block party, the kind of suburban gathering where everyone drinks cheap beer, kids run through sprinklers, and the air smells like grilled burgers and sunscreen. I just bought my house 3 months earlier, a modest single-story place on Sycamore Street, outside Boise, Idaho. I didn't know many neighbors yet, but Mark made it easy to talk. He wasn't loud or flashy like some of the guys trying to outgrill each other. He was just calm. Mid-40s maybe, sunburned arms, easy voice, and a ball cap so worn it looked like it had lived a few lives before him. We talked near the grill for a while about home repairs. I'd mentioned that my back porch was starting to rot, and he nodded like he already knew the problem. "I run a small contracting business," he said, tapping his beer can. "Mostly decks, sheds, fences. If you want, I could swing by this week, give you a fair quote." It didn't sound like a sales pitch, just a neighbor helping another neighbor out. A few nights later, he pulled up in a faded blue pickup with Benson Repairs painted in white on the door, half chipped off. He checked the porch, took some measurements, and quoted me something that seemed reasonable. He didn't rush, didn't push, just friendly, reliable, ordinary. And after everything I'd been through moving and dealing with flaky contractors before, I was honestly relieved. He started the following Monday. Mark would arrive early, usually before I left for work, and I'd hear faint hammering when I came home in the evenings. He always swept up the sawdust, left tools neatly stacked, and sometimes even left handwritten notes on the counter. "Good progress today. Porch framing almost done." It felt reassuring, a sign that someone competent had things under control. About 2 weeks in, I realized I actually liked having him around. The porch looked amazing, and he seemed trustworthy enough that I gave him a spare key just so he could come and go while I was at work. That was the first mistake. At first it was just small stuff, barely worth mentioning. One morning, I noticed my screwdriver set was out on the kitchen counter, even though I kept it in the garage. I assumed Mark borrowed it. Then my coffee mugs weren't in their usual order, and a sticky note appeared on the fridge that read, "Great weather today." The handwriting was slightly different, taller letters, uneven spacing, not like Mark's usual neat scrawl. When I asked him about it, he just chuckled. Maybe I left it half asleep. Been running long days lately. His tone was so normal, so casual, that I brushed it off. But things kept shifting. A picture frame in the hallway was tilted. My grocery receipts vanished. One of my kitchen drawers was rearranged. I started taking mental photos in my head every morning before leaving. What was on the counter, what wasn't, just to check if anything changed. It always did. One Friday, I came home and found a photograph sitting on my dining table. It was a printed image of me, standing in my backyard, looking down at my phone. The picture had been taken from inside the house, through the kitchen window. I froze. The blinds had been closed when I left that morning. My hands shook as I checked the house, room by room. Everything looked untouched. The front door was locked, windows sealed. I opened my phone's security camera app, but all my saved clips were gone. The system showed no footage for the last 2 days. It was as if someone had wiped it clean. When I called Mark, he sounded calm as ever. "That's weird," he said. "Maybe your Wi-Fi reset? Those systems can be glitchy." His tone was smooth, too smooth. That weekend, I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe I'd deleted something by accident. Maybe I was stressed. But the following Monday, my calendar app had 3 new entries, lunch dates and appointments with names I didn't recognize. When I texted my sister, she replied, "Didn't we already talk this morning?" We hadn't. Someone had messaged her from my number, asking about our parents' address, pretending to be me. That was when everything snapped. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was someone crawling inside my life. One password, one habit, one key at a time. I confronted Mark that afternoon. He arrived wearing his usual cap, toolbox in hand, that calm, neighborly smile plastered across his face. "Hey, what's up?" I told him about the photos, the emails, the messages. My voice was shaking. His eyes narrowed just slightly, then softened, like he was looking at a nervous child. "Maybe you should get some rest," he said quietly. Sometimes when people move or deal with stress, they start imagining patterns. He wasn't mocking me. His voice was sympathetic. And somehow, that made it worse. He patched a small crack on the porch, then packed up his tools. As he turned to leave, I caught a flicker, a faint half-smile curling beneath his calm expression. The kind of smile someone gives when they already know the ending. That night, I changed the locks. Every single one. The next morning, when I came downstairs, the front door was unlocked. Not broken, not scratched. Just unlocked. On the counter sat another sticky note, the same unfamiliar handwriting as before. "You're forgetting again." The air in the house felt different, heavier, still, like someone had been breathing it all night while I slept. I checked every closet, every corner. Nothing missing, nothing moved. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I called the police. The officer who showed up looked barely 25, polite, detached. He asked if there were signs of forced entry. I said no. He asked if anything was stolen. I said no. He gave me a rehearsed smile and said, "Probably a misunderstanding with your contractor." Maybe he still has a copy of the key I wanted to show him, the picture, the deleted emails, the messages to my sister. But they were gone. Every trace wiped clean. He filed a quick report, handed me a card, and left. That was the moment I realized I was completely alone in this. Over the next week, small reminders appeared again. A hammer I didn't own sitting on my table. My boots lined up neatly by the door. I never arranged them that way. A voicemail from an unknown number, nothing but faint breathing for nearly a full minute before cutting off. I stopped sleeping much after that. Every sound in the night became a threat. Every creak of the floor felt like a step. One night around midnight, while brushing my teeth, I saw movement in the bathroom mirror. The reflection of someone standing in my backyard near the fence. A tall figure in dark clothes, motionless, facing the house. My heart thudded so hard I could barely breathe. I grabbed my phone, but before I could open the camera app, the motion lights outside blinked off, like someone had cut the power. By the time I ran to the window, the yard was empty, except for one thing. A single silver key lay on the porch steps. My old spare key, the one I'd given Mark. I stood there, staring at it through the glass, too afraid to open the door. When morning came, I picked it up with a paper towel and threw it straight into the trash. That same day, I put the house up for sale. A month later, I moved into a smaller apartment across town. New locks, new security system, no contractors, no neighbors I didn't know personally. For the first few weeks, I finally slept again. But sometimes, when I open my laptop, I notice folders I didn't create. Emails missing. A framed picture slightly turned on my desk. Once, while scrolling my phone gallery, I found a photo I didn't take. My apartment window, from the outside at night. There was no timestamp. I deleted it immediately, but my hands were shaking for hours. I keep telling myself it's nothing, just a glitch, just paranoia. But deep down, I know Mark Benson is still out there, somewhere, quietly building another version of someone else's life. One nail, one note, one key at a time. And maybe, just maybe, he never really stopped having mine.